My dog just joined.
All right. You are all set, Dave?
Okay, thank you. This is a Shared Services Committee meeting on the 15th of March, and it's 7 minutes after 6. And James, if you could do a roll call.
Certainly. Councillor Camillo?
Here.
Councillor Minor?
Here.
Councillor Nagel?
Here.
Board Member Sylvia?
Present.
Board Member Stam? Absent at this time. Also present, Town Manager Chapman and Superintendent Brummett.
Okay, we're here to, Mr. Chapman requested that we hold another meeting. We haven't met in quite a while. And concerning the practicality of shared services between the town and the Board of Education. If Mr. Chapman, do you have anything you want to say, first of all, to kick this off?
The only thing I will say is that, I've been back now just over a year, and it is pretty obvious to me that the way in which we've been operating can continue to operate this way. We seem to be getting along fairly well, both on a administrative level and a elected level. However, I believe from my perspective, there are opportunities to reduce cost overall and become more efficient. And it's something that I recommended in the budget presentation that I presented on Tuesday, that I think shared services, not only between the Board of Ed and the general government, but also with other towns. I think we really have to start looking at things like that, because we cannot continue to exist with the limited finances and the continued increases in costs. So it just seems to me that by joining partnerships together, we can be more efficient. And I think in this particular case, there's a number of areas that could work.
Thank you. I noticed in starting to go through the budget process with the council that I've seen things you have done and where there are possibilities or not possibilities, even though we've just started going through that. Anybody on the committee want to share some possibilities? I know we had some generalities before.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Anyone? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. Well, when I'm done, I'd really like to see Dr. Brummett and Keith Chapman sit down, because they're the two professionals here, and come back to us with their ideas. My idea is, and I've talked to other Board of Ed members and council members, all departments, merge them to the town side. Employees and staff would all go, no one would lose their jobs, and let the Board of Ed teach the kids, because that's what they're good at, and let the town administration run the business side of it. This seems to be the can that keeps getting kicked down the road. I'd like to stop that now. IT, transportation, facilities, and finance. And you let the head people on the Board of Ed side come over, and between the town administrative side and the Board of Ed side, they'll figure out who can run or who's better at it in that department. And that's more for Keith and Maureen to do than for us to do. We can only start the ball rolling. It's up to them to come up with a plan and then bring it back to us. And then we'll say, hey, take this back to your Board of Ed members and vote on it. And then the council can do something with it. But we could do this pretty quick. Probably get it done by the next school year in September. Weathersfield's already done a good part of it. It took them about 2 years for them to start to see any substantial savings, because they had to figure out who was who and who could do what. And so it will take some time, but I believe it will work. And we're probably talking quite a bit of money in savings that can be put into buildings and infrastructure in the town. So next, who's next? I've said all I can say right now.
Anyone else want to chime in before I say something, Steve?
Maureen has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maureen.
Sure, thank you. Well, when I worked in my former school district in Plainville, we did have quite a bit of shared services. And when I was hired, I definitely said to the Board of Ed, I was very amenable to that. I think, obviously we haven't met in quite a while, but I do think there could be an opportunity at this time. My facilities director is retiring at the end of July. And I know that was one of the positions we talked about as a committee the last time I sat on a committee meeting, which was well over a year ago, as certainly an opportunity. I believe I saw in the town manager's budget the proposal for a facilities person, if I read that correctly. So I don't know if this is a nice opportunity to chat about the possibilities. Because there is one person leaving, and I don't believe there's anyone on the town side that currently holds that position. Last I knew. So anyway, that was something I'd like to surface as a possible entry point into this. I've got some thoughts on it, but I would obviously need to talk more about what the town's functionality is. I pulled our job description as well as the town's last job description, just for my own information. So anyway, that was what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Maureen. Steve, you got your hand up? That's okay.
Thank you, David. This has been one of my most favorite topics for about the last 5 years. And much what Keith has explained, and also Michael and Dr. Brummett. I've been through numerous presentations, specifically with the town of West Hartford, coming and visiting with us almost 3+ years ago, and Vernon and Weathersfield. I'm fully on board with the concept of consolidating the departments. It was one of the primary reasons why I ran for the Board of Education, when I learned that Mr. Salamone had encouraged that we had 8 organizations and allowed it to expand to 16, fully separating Board of Education from the town. I think it's an opportune time and would welcome any sort of dialogue and recommended approach that would come from discussions between Mr. Chapman and Dr. Brummett and their recommendations on how we should proceed. So I'm fully supportive of this effort, and look forward to getting it started tomorrow, to be frank. But and I do believe that Dr. Brummett has an excellent suggestion on our first steps, since we have an opportunity, and we should take full advantage of it. Thank you.
I agree with Steve and Mike. Thing I'm concerned about is feasibility and not just jumping in for the sake of jumping in on it. I believe that what can work with both you, Maureen, and Keith, sharing your expertise as to how to proceed in any of those, in terms of whether it's efficiency or saving money, or just a beneficial thing to do, or if indeed certain elements of it, or one of the 3 departments, for lack of a better word that we use, or it's just not feasible to do. I'd like to see both of you also to look at what you can do, what's really feasible, what the pluses and non-pluses are from your perspectives, and do it incrementally, or however is best, which, Maureen, I know you presented one opportunity. It seems to be a place to start just at first blush. So I'm in agreement so far with those who have spoken. Keith, do you have any? Oh, I see Mike's got his hand up. Go ahead, Mike.
Also, the highway department, Public Works takes care of, somebody's got an echo there. They take the senior buses, police, fire, their own vehicles, Parks and Rec. They help when they need help on their vehicles. So this isn't going to be anything new for them to absorb something like that and come up with a better maintenance schedule that saves money. And the facilities, we know the town really should take over. Finance. Now, if Lou and his department moved over and worked with Maureen, Lou wants to retire in 3 to 4 years. Well, by the time he's ready to go, he'll be able to show everybody where everything is and how he's been doing things. And between the two, they may learn something from each other instead of just saying, here you go, here's a pile of paper. And so it will take time. So that's something else to look at. It can't just happen overnight. So that's one way to do it. And I'm looking forward to really getting the ball rolling here. So.
Yeah, I do agree that while we are concentrating on shared services between the Board of Ed and the town side, I think, as you've alluded to, there are things within the different other departments within the town that might make things more efficient and save costs as well. So during the budget process, I'm going to keep looking with that in mind with the other departments also. Keith, do you have a comment to make about what we chatted about so far, or anyone else?
Yeah,
I
would.
Go ahead. Do you want me to have Chris talk first? I will.
Okay.
I just saw his hand to go up. Yes? Okay, Chris?
I'll defer to Keith. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that we are not talking about rocket science here. This is pretty straightforward stuff. Many towns have done this and been very successful over the years. I think the sooner we get this under our belt, then we can take on other challenges that have been, we'll say, kicked down the road as well. And this seems like an easy one in my mind. It's just a matter of everybody understanding what the goal is and the objectives and how to get there. And I don't see any reason why we can't do exactly what was described with finance, with facilities and transportation and IT. They're all services that we both utilize and perform, and that just doesn't make any sense not to move forward as quickly as possible and get them done. That's all I have right at this point.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
good. Okay, so I think if I'm correct, Cindy, Steve, and myself are the only original three that started with the committee. This will be our going on 4th year now, that the discussions were initially started. And at the time, we didn't have a permanent superintendent in place. Pam was acting as interim. We started the initial discussions and explored opportunities there. And then I believe it was just before the election cycle that we pursued conversations with West Hartford in terms of how they had implemented it. And their experience was that it was something that took several years, but primarily was driven through employee attrition over the years and exploring the opportunities of what was redundant from one side to the other. And I think the takeaway with them was that it didn't happen overnight. It was something that was succession planning as it occurred. And as Maureen alluded to earlier, with their facilities director retiring in July and us looking to potentially hire in the next budget cycle, would be a perfect opportunity to implement facilities. But I think the biggest fear would be in general, and this isn't specific to the BOE and the town, is the fire department, as Keith's referenced through the Owens report, has done a relatively good job in maintaining their buildings. And a lot of that was done as a result of the Board of Fire Commissioners operating independently with their own facilities budget and taking care of their buildings independently themselves. If we can move forward with this, we just need to honestly move forward with prioritizing the projects that need to be done first versus one organization over another. That's my only concern with any of this moving forward, is it all comes over, in theory, a lot of it comes over to the town side, but we're processing it no differently that they are indeed our town assets. So I am all forward in continuing to look towards how to do this. We do it to some degree. Parks and Rec takes care of lawn care and snow removal for all the BOE sites. We do have, existing mechanics on both sides that theoretically can be merged together and have a greater oversight of all under one organizational roof. And as Mike alluded to, maybe get some best practices to extending the life of our assets on the buses, as we try to do with the highway department's fleet. So I think these are all good things to move forward with. And I agree that the next step should be with Maureen and Keith sitting down together and trying to see what are the easiest to transition and implement, and then start to develop a long-term plan of how we can potentially look to explore other groupings and merging them together. So that's my thoughts for this point.
Mike, your hand was up first. You're muted.
There we go. Thanks, Chris. I think we're all on the same page here. So, James, do we make a motion, or do we just let Dr. Brummer?
Mike, Maureen has her hand up. Would you like to have her say something before we move along to that?
Yep, go ahead, Maureen.
No, I think, Mike, you're on the right track. I do think myself and Keith and probably Janet and Lou should sit down to talk through, at least right now, the facilities position, but also, further discussion on the other positions. The longer I've been in this community and I talk with, a variety of stakeholders, our town services overlap a lot. If you talk about snow removal during a storm, or, some of the mechanical stuff that's been discussed tonight, those departments are already talking to each other. It's just not really memorialized as to how, how they work together, so to speak, and are there efficiencies that we're missing out on. So I think I'm in agreement with what's been said. Let's explore it. I think it does need to be done diligently. Attrition is the best opportunity that you have for this without someone losing their job. So I'm happy to sit down with the right stakeholders to help this move forward.
Mike, you want to finish your thought?
Yeah,
Thank you.
I don't think anybody would really lose their job, because you're going to need those bodies. They're there now doing the job. We could probably manage them better, though, under one umbrella, one group of people. Your janitors in the schools, the town, Parks and Rec. We could even go there and say everything that's blacktop, the highway department handles, and they cut grass and they do sidewalks when it snows. But the blacktop could be handled by the highway department, which would help the schools also. Just, we can go in a whole bunch of different directions, but let's start right with what we're talking about. Thanks, guys, for coming today.
Yeah, I'm in agreement too. Keith, do you have anything to add, or as Mike was alluding to, is there something we need to do formally before you, Maureen, and others that are appropriate sit down to kind of hash this out as to what's possible and feasible?
I think Stephen has more to add. His hand's up.
He does? Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't see him. Go ahead.
Thanks, David. My experience has been basically I go back to the Anna Reynolds Building Committee. when we were having our initial discussions, it always came back to, so what's the first step in a parliamentary fashion that we needed to do? And then basically on the Board of Ed side, it was identified that we needed to bring this topic up as a discussion and action item. So I would ask Dr. Brummett if we could add this to our next BOE meeting so that we can get the Board of Ed to officially support the recommendation that's coming from this subcommittee, report back to Paul, and make sure that the Board of Ed is in complete agreement with the approach. And I think we'll have the support of this once this is fully vetted and explained to Paul and the remaining board members. But it's been customary that we've always, in a parliamentary fashion, bring it up and have action to say, okay, the board agrees for Dr. Brummett to have discussions with Keith Chapman. That's the only thing that's going across my mind from a parliamentary fashion. But correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Brummett, would that be the most appropriate approach from a BOE perspective?
I would agree. And Paul is aware. He and I have spoken about the current vacancy. I believe he's also spoken to the mayor about it. So I do agree, though, that the full board should be made aware of this discussion and perhaps just simply endorse or, support my efforts to discuss the feasibility of a shared service with this particular position.
Right. I mean,
And go
so
from there.
yeah, I mean, that's, again, I come back to just the parliamentary aspect of it. I don't see any issues with what this subcommittee has recommended and suggested to Keith and Dr. Brummett. I just want to make sure that I haven't bruised anybody's feelings or toes from their respective authority or positions on the board. And so if we could get that on our next agenda just for discussion and get it formalized, that would be a big help in helping to support Keith and Dr. Brummett in their discussions.
Chris, your hand's up. I don't know if it's from last time or you have something.
No, I'm back up again.
Go ahead.
Just to piggyback off what Steve had just said, I think the priority right now is to focus on this one position, which is a very big position when it comes to budgetary expenditures and oversight. And I think right now the focus should be on this position. And as we move forward to continue the conversations, once one position works, to continue on to others versus trying to make this some gradient change, that is just not as feasible to do as working independently one by one as we go along. I think that's the better approach. I don't know what anybody else's opinion is, but that's mine.
Thank you. I think discussion should generally start with everything, but I do agree with Chris that since that's the most feasible one to work on, that's where we start. Keith, do you have anything to add? Do you believe this should go on the council's next meeting, just briefly to say that this is what we're in favor of and that the Board of Ed is in the process of doing the same thing?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to have both the Board of Ed and the council support what we're trying to accomplish. I think, though, you have to be clear on what it is that you're seeking to do, because there seems to be a disagreement on whether we're going to start with one or we're going to, I would say everything should be looked at. Everything on this should be on the table, because we're talking, generally about 3 or 4 areas, but there's probably a lot of other areas as well that could be addressed. And I would hate to, delay this process and miss opportunities. And I don't know. I mean, to me, if we're going to do this, I think we do everything and get it over with, and come back to the board and the town. And if they either party doesn't want to do it, then vote it down. But to take one step at a time as you're suggesting, I don't know as you have that luxury. We have issues in many areas based upon what we've just learned recently concerning facilities, concerning the radio system, concerning, the motor vehicle fleet. To me, I don't know, sometimes government works way too slow when you don't have to. I think you got to look at this as how would you run your business? And if business needed to change, would they take months and years to do it, or would they? I mean, it's obvious that everybody's been talking about it for 4 years and nothing's got done. So to me, you've lost 4 years already.
Mike, you see your hand up again?
Yeah. And you should look at everything and talk about it. Yes, you need a facilities person, but you need people everywhere, and they should join together, joint services. We need to work together for the town. Let's keep the politics out of this. That's what's going to happen. I know it. Somebody's going to say, oh, let's get this one involved. Let's go to the parents and let them come in. And then you're going to have a storm that we don't need. We need to get things accomplished. And that's why no one ever steps up to this and does anything, because they're afraid of what happens on the street. Well, if you guys, Dr. Brummett and Keith, have the plan for these things and make it work on your table, do a tabletop discussion with your people, then bring it back to us. Keep us out of it. We're just starting the conversation. We don't belong in the same room while you're doing this. So,
Chris, did you have something to add, or is it up from the last time your hand?
No, I'd like to
Okay.
go back on it. To Keith's remark of, 4 years getting to this point, you're correct. Again, year 1 to year 2, we had an interim superintendent with no permanent superintendent in place. And it was the opinion at that point to leave it to the next superintendent to make the changes, which we are. Last year, we met almost a year to date, was our last committee meeting of this subcommittee. So the last year is a year lost for no apparent reason. So you're correct. We have taken a long time to get here, and I just don't want to have it unravel by rushing it. I think we've got a perfect opportunity to pursue one right off the bat, because there is an exact, definition of both positions being open, to handle that and to continue on the conversation of the rest. I'm not saying don't do anything else. Absolutely, have the conversation. Maybe there are other things that we can merge right away, but don't do this just to do this is my only comment.
Steve?
Thanks. I understand in greater context what Chris is trying to share with us. My gut is telling me I'm with Keith Chapman. We can prioritize that facilities first because that's the opportunity. But ultimately, as Mike has mentioned, if Keith and Dr. Brummett have a game plan in front of us and a process that they want to do, and they feel comfortable that we can do 10 different organizations and bring them together, great. If they feel as though there needs to be a little bit of stepping or prioritization, fine. But it's like Mike said, it's between the two people that know the organization the best, and I would follow their recommendations without issue. Should there be any kind of contention or issues that need to be resolved, I'm sure it can be discussed amongst our representative groups to come to an appropriate conclusion. But from everything that I've witnessed, I would be siding right now with Keith and just say, let's get it done. And let the, and I'd follow whatever recommendation that Dr. Brummett or Keith would put in front of us. Thanks.
Mike?
also, Dr. Brummett, you seem to be more proactive than our past superintendent. You're not reactive. And I believe we can get this done. I've talked to you about this a couple times, and I got my fingers crossed. Thank you.
And I'm willing to jump in, and I think I'm happy to schedule a meeting with Keith and Janet and Lou and myself to, you know, look at what we have in front of us and then any longitudinal arrangements. Obviously, I think one discussion will lend itself to the other. I mean, it would be foolish not to. How long that takes remains to be seen, but I think a journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. So I suppose that would be a meeting.
Chris, you have your hand up?
Thanks, Dave. Just a quick question. Keith, any of your travels over the years, different municipalities, have you ever been directly involved with merging organizations together, or have you seen it at any of your stops along the way?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I can tell you that in the city of Hartford, not that we want to compare ourselves with the city, but in that particular case, all the IT for both general government and Board of Ed is one function. Finance wise, I believe, can't remember now if East Hartford is merged together, but there's a number of communities that have merged their operations. Waterford has a merged operation. Yeah, so yeah, some of them I've experienced and worked with, others I've observed, but again, any configuration will work if everybody is on the same sheet of music, or no configuration will work if there's resistance. And that's what we have to get over, is that this is not a power play. This is doing what's right for the people we serve. And we need to find ways to be more efficient and cut costs. There's absolutely no question about it. And you know, I'd be happy to say, look, you know, we've got 4 major areas that you guys have talked about tonight. I say within 3 months we get facilities done. The next 3 months we take another one on, and every 3 months we merge the appropriate people and become more efficient. It does not going to hurt. And again, I think it's been emphasized, nobody's looking to eliminate positions. We're just looking to become more efficient. And, you know, it is a struggle right now at times. I'll give you an example, just an example of how difficult things can be. And it's not, it would not have occurred if we were already merged 4 years ago. But you know, I have the responsibility of overseeing the operations for a number of general government departments. And in one particular case, we had an individual that was tested for drugs and found to be dirty, meaning that they failed their test. That individual was home for 5 weeks under counseling, unpaid, before that person was allowed to come back to work. And he had to be cleared through a process through our medical advisor. Now, I get a complaint from the union, the ASME union, stating that, hey, look, school employees have been caught with illegal drugs, and they were only suspended for 3 days, and they're in the same union. So we're going to go to arbitration, and we're going to demand that past practice prevail. Now, we can't afford to have people driving huge dump trucks and payloaders and other pieces of equipment unless we are sure that they are clean. Now, I don't know the story that took place in the Board of Ed. I think it was before Maureen was here. But yeah, so 3 days of suspension unpaid versus 5 weeks, that creates a big problem for me when I go to arbitration, because they're going to throw it right in our face that it's the same union and one entity is punishing a person for illegal drugs for 3 days, and the other entity is punishing someone that's tested positive for 5 weeks unpaid. But that's just a little example of what we need to avoid in the future. And the way to do that is to consolidate. So we're all doing the same thing without question. And I just point that out because it's very, we'll say, it's happening right now as we speak. So it's current information. So that's just an example. We will probably lose our case. The employee will probably get paid for 4 weeks and 3 days for sitting home, getting rehabilitated. That's just an example.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that. As far as I'm concerned, I don't want anybody running a push mower that's under the influence. Never pay a dump truck. But I think the issue you're going to find in that is, in the event that it's all under one umbrella and all under one union, I don't understand how the shared services would treat that any bit differently, or could possibly treat that any differently. I think that's going to be our biggest challenge, is that the precedent has already been set. And I think they're going to fall back to that within their own respective union groupings. Am I correct in that?
Well, they can. However, this is not two different unions. This is one union that serves both the general government and the Board of Ed. And it would be much more advisable to have only one entity that deals with the discipline, so we don't end up with a situation like this again, which would mean, at least for the union functions, or maybe the whole personnel function, we need to be looking at that, which is one that hasn't been discussed tonight, but maybe personnel should be a joint service that's provided by one entity rather than two.
No.
So it's something, I mean, we currently share our testing for clerical, for example, is done by the Board of Education, not done by the town. So that works, but it's two different entities that are working together. And if we can do that well, why can't we just merge it together so there's no loose ends at any time dealing with very important issues? Like you said, you wouldn't want somebody on drugs pushing a lawnmower. We don't want them either pushing a lawnmower, but so it's just an example. That's all I'm trying to point out.
Right. So, I mean, in that example, does it make sense to have one entity handling certain aspects and others handling others? What I'm getting at is, you just said that, currently we utilize the HR department from the BOE for testing. What I'm getting at, is there a way to organizationally change it to have them with more oversight in certain aspects and us with more oversight in other aspects?
Absolutely. We want the best in their professional ability to be the ones that are running each of these operations. Not, I'm not saying that the general government has the expertise to do what the Board of Education does. I don't know. That's part of what we have to analyze and say, okay, who really does do a better job, and focus our direction in that regard, rather than, giving everything to one or the other. There may be things that the board does much better than us, and there may be things that the general government does much better than the school department.
Right.
We don't know yet. Right.
And I think that's what I was just trying to get at, that it doesn't necessarily have to be a one size fits all to be everything on government side and nothing on the Board of Ed side, or vice versa, that we should really look to the best expertise available for each role and let those roles fall where they are.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think once again, it comes down to feasibility. Shared services, but also the feasibility as to how to do them, and if indeed they can be shared. And I agree with Mr. Chapman about it's good to have one union to deal with, so you don't get different when something happens that it is felt that the government should punish in some way the employee for something that's happened, that there's not two separate ways of dealing with it. Of course, everything has to do with a specific circumstance, no matter what it happens to be. Some of the discussion we've just had is very good, but I think we're getting ahead of ourselves right now, and it's something that could be dealt with later on. Once Mr. Chapman and Ms. Burma get together along with others to give us more input as to what plan they see coming. Possibly once again starting with the facilities, but not ignoring the other opportunities that appear to be there as well. Anyone else have a additional comment to make? Chris, I see your hand is still up, so I'll ask you. Nope. Okay.
No, that's it.
Pardon me?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Do we need to make a resolution? Do we need to do anything formally here, Mr. Chapman or Ms. Brummett?
I would just say that the looser you make the resolution that would go to the board and to the council, I think the more beneficial you'll have it, because that then opens up anything and everything. As we go through the discussions, we may discover things that we haven't even thought about, that we would be limited if we compress it down to only 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 areas to look at. I think you have to trust your administration that we'll work together to find resolutions that will recommend. If we can't find a resolution and it's an issue that you as a council or board members feel strongly about, then we're here to serve you guys. But I think that the more open you can have your resolution to allow us to do as much work as possible, the better off you're going to be.
Can someone else give a general resolution? Since I'm the chair of the committee, I think it should come from somebody else. Mike, you're muted.
One more question. Can we ask Janet how she feels about some of this that we've been talking about?
I've talked to all my department heads about the idea of shared services.
Okay. All right. I see she's attending.
Okay. You can ask her if she's on to be able to speak. I don't know.
I don't see her on our screen. Janet, if you're there, can you unmute yourself? And if you have anything to add?
Actually, she can't unmute. She's on the attendee side, but if you guys are interested, I can unmute her and allow her to talk.
Okay, go ahead. Why not?
And she's muted.
You there, Janet?
I am here.
There we go.
Yes, Keith has discussed this with me and exploring all the opportunities. I'm very much in favor of us actually meeting and sitting down and seeing where we can bring our groups together.
Thank you.
Okay, good. It's good to hear that you're on board. Can someone make a resolution unless there's some further discussion?
At this point, you're not set for a resolution. You only have
Okay.
a discussion item at the moment.
All right.
So at this point, I would just say you recommend that the town manager and the superintendent get together and bring a recommendation back to the committee. At that meeting, we can have a resolution set for you.
Okay, that's good. I just was feeling around as to what was appropriate or not. And James, since you're our expert on that, thank you for that.
No problem.
Anything further that we wish to discuss on the matter at this point? I believe, I don't think we need to take a vote. Steve, unmute yourself.
So, James, sorry to step on your toes a little bit. If after Dr. Brumman and Keith talk, can they bring you guys are calling it a resolution. I call it a motion. But basically, they could bring the motion directly back to either the town council and the BOE at the same time. So at the next meeting that the BOE has coming up, it'll just say discussion and potential action on, well, instead of it coming back to us.
Well,
I'm trying to sidestep a step. They can get together and talk about it and then bring the recommended motion back to the respective boards for this, the council or the Board of Ed for vote.
Effectively, it should actually come back through you to each of your respective boards. So the Joint Shared Services Committee, which was designed for this purpose, should recommend back to the Board of Education and to the council the recommended actions of the subcommittee, and then each of your boards should act.
So can we have another meeting in a couple of days from now, or 48 hours or whatever? And
Whenever they're set to go, I'll get one set up for you guys. I have no problem with that.
It's going to take more than 48 hours for them to sit down.
come on, pressure. Dr.
Maybe
Brummett always performs well.
weeks of meetings. Well, you're talking a lot here. So let them get it so they can bring it to us. We review it and then we can decide. Because what's going to happen is we're going to start conversations everywhere else and it may hamper progress. So let's.
All right, I'll go get a shot of vodka. I'll be fine.
Okay.
Chris? You done, Mike?
Yes.
Chris, do you have a comment to make?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's the way it should be handled. It should be that Keith and Maureen should sit down, come up to some consensus of exactly how broad they want to go with for the time being. And now that we're back in meeting again, and we can come together as soon as we need to take the next step.
Okay, thank you. So should we leave it that we will meet after Keith and Maureen have met with others in terms of some kind of a plan, and then see what they come up with, and then bring it to our respective groups, be it the board or the council. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Would a month from now, just to hear where we are
Yeah,
at?
that's my next thing to ask. Keith, what kind of time do you, or Maureen, do you think you will need before you can come back to us with something?
I will say that, am I muted?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I would say that I'm not one that wants to delay things. The sooner, the better. So I'm looking at my calendar right now. If Maureen could look at her calendar, I believe that we probably could meet later this week and probably have something out to you for a meeting for you to have at the same time next week, in my opinion. Maureen, what do you think?
I could, looking at my calendar for the rest of this week, and I would want to run it by Lou, but I would probably be able to meet Thursday afternoon as a starting point.
Thursday afternoon is good for me. Janet, is it good for you?
I'll make it good for me.
Okay, so Thursday afternoon, say at
Why don't
1:30.
we say 2 o'clock, and I will confirm that with Lou either later tonight or tomorrow, but I'm going to pencil it in as our first meeting to talk about shared services.
And what I would suggest is that we agree that we come out of that meeting with both of us sending a letter or email to this committee that we are on full support of blah, 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 whatever it may be. So we just don't waste time and get this underway, because time flies when you're having fun. And this is going to be fun. Or maybe to be fun. So, okay, so we'll meet on Thursday at 2. We'll generate a joint letter back to you as a subcommittee for your meeting next Monday at 6, if everybody's available.
Okay.
And then we can have it on our respective agendas for the following day for the council, which is it following day, James?
The 23rd, we have our next council regular meeting.
And when do you have your board meeting, Maureen?
24th.
Okay, so we'll try to shoot for the 23rd and 24th to have on both agendas.
Very good. Does anybody have a further comment to make? Steve, I see your hand up. You need to unmute yourself.
My apologies. I forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, no problem. Is there any further discussion about the plan of action that has been put forth? Anyone have a problem with the meeting next Monday at 6 p.m. at this point?
We're good.
Okay, I guess we're good. Then unless there's anything else to discuss, I believe it's time to, let's see, we have public participation. Do we have any public there?
Just Janet.
Just Janet. I guess she's spoken. Okay.
Your only other item will actually be approving that meeting date.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we plan on meeting next Monday. I've forgotten the date at the moment. It's 6
22nd.
p.m. And could you take a call for the vote?
Okay, motion for a meeting for March 22nd at 6 p.m. Councilor Camillo,
Yes.
Councilor Minor,
Yes.
Councilor Nagel,
Yes.
Member Sylvia,
Yes.
and Member Stam is absent. So that's unanimous, 4 and 1 absent.
Very good. And the next thing on our agenda, I believe, is adjournment, isn't it? If someone could make a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second? I need a second.
I refuse to adjourn. No,
You
I'll
can
second that.
Okay, thank you, Steve. We need to take a roll call vote on that, I guess,
If
in
you
the
would like,
world.
Councilor Camillo,
Yes.
Councilor Minor,
Yes.
Councilor Nagel,
Yes.
Member Sylvia,
Yes.
unanimous, 4, 1 absent. It is
Okay, very good.
59.
Thank you very much, James, everyone else. And we'll see you maybe before, or at least see you on the Zooming next Monday. Thank you.
I really appreciate everybody. This means a lot to me. A great deal. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, take care.